to a special video effects episode. Spring Summer Fashion Week for 2016 in New York City is coming to a close. In this episode, I will be going over brief process and ideas regarding some of the work that I produced during the week. I hope that you have a passion for fashion. This first piece focuses on the silhouette of a model completing her walk down the runway. It is cropped so extremely that it looks almost like a peephole, which both promotes and criticizes the voyeuristic nature of runway shows. The polished concrete floor, when combined with the lossy digital capture method of using my phone, looks almost like shallow water and a sunset. Look at that beach. Cowabunga, dude! This second piece is a blurry picture. Look, her face is warped. You get to see how the light reflected off the model and that energy was captured by the sensor of the camera over the period of 1/4 of a second. This sort of photograph finds a place between still and animated visuals, highlighting the inability to accurately capture things using photography without some degree of discrepancy between the actual experience and the resulting photograph. Say cheese. This third image is an example of a dolly zoom. It is similar to the previous photograph, but this one moves and centers on the focal length discrepancy of photography as the abstracting element as opposed to time. Don't look too long, you might get dizzy. Like in Vertigo. This piece is impossible to look at easily in most formats because it requires a certain resolution and display of that resolution to highlight the pattern compared to the image. The model gets lost in the pattern, exaggerated by the high contrast of her black and white clothes, which were digitally made purely black and white after the photograph was processed. This one is the first piece I made of the week that incorporated VHS footage. Because it's from an automatically exposed point and shoot camera, it is overexposed due to the lighting of the runway. It loses detail of the clothing, which is odd given that the runway is meant to highlight clothing. The woman in the foreground is slightly blurred through motion blur, but not to the extreme that the earlier piece I described was. This piece was done using a track mat in After Effects, using the original video as a black and white Luma track mat that I increased the brightness of the red channel, which works because her skin tone and the lighting and her clothing all combined to make it possible to increase the red channel. It's another example of time manipulation. This piece is very similar to the previous one, but it didn't work out to use a specific color for tracking matte purposes because her clothing is mostly dark. The background is VHS footage that is chaotic as handheld and without control over exposure, while the foreground is slow and highly organized. I don't know what that means, but I like it aesthetically. This is another example of pattern overtaking the model and the model simultaneously overtaking the pattern. Visually, it is unclear what the foreground and background of the image is. That makes it look very flat. Look at her blinking her eyes. She sure looks tired. This one is a subtle overlay of video taken at a high frame rate, superimposed over a very similar shot done through a VHS camera. It's dirty and grimy in an aesthetic way that highlights a certain futility but curiosity. These two are very similar. Slow motion, keyed out visuals focusing primarily on color of outfits overlaid over a sped up, well actually rewound VHS tape. It highlights time manipulation and other things. Look, it's interesting, but the nostalgic shtick of it makes me worried it doesn't have a deeper worth. This last piece is a still from Jeremy Scott's show that is surreal in its execution because the visual is referencing a time period that is both old and new. The outfit looks back to the 50s with rose-colored glasses. It is also surreal because using VHS is kind of outdated, and the nostalgia of it is an interesting thing to look at aesthetically versus the pure nostalgic aspect. I hope you have a passion for fashion.